a gun salesman decided to ban all Muslims from his shop. Here's what he had to say for himself on CNN.
Now, I have a moral and legal responsibility to ensure the safety of all patriots in my community. And so, effective immediately, I'm declaring Florida gun supply as a Muslim-free zone. I will not arm and train those who wish to do harm to my fellow patriots.
Andrew Hallinan, the owner of that Florida gun supply store, joins me now. Good morning.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here. So you're standing in front of a Confederate flag. You're banning Muslims who read the Quran from your store. You want to be provocative. Why?
You know, the goal of the video was to offend. It was to offend as many people as I could, quite honestly, so we could start a conversation about the political correctness that has become overly extreme here in the United States and causing loss of life that we could prevent if we if we looked at Islam for what it is.
Okay, so I'm all for a conversation, right? But you're going one step farther. You're banning Muslims who follow the Quran from your store. How do you determine which Muslim who follows the Quran?
You know, it's a pretty unenforceable action, right? I mean, I can't by law ask each and every person that comes through my doors what their religious background is. But the ATF expressly gives me the right and the authority to deny service to anybody that I feel is a threat for any reason. And it happens on a weekly basis that we have people come through the gun shop that they pass their background check. They seem, but they seem a little off. And we make the determination on a case-by-case basis whether or not we're going to arm and train these people, because the last thing we want to do is have more loss of life, for any sort of tragic event.
But mostly, if their last name sounds a certain way to you, that would disqualify them.
Well, no. I mean, you can have the first name of Abdul, and we're not going to disqualify you, but it will be done on a case-by-case basis. The broader picture here is that we want to bring light to Islam's tenets as a whole. We do believe that Islam is evil at its core, and that the Quran is built to establish a one-world order, a caliphate, and superior. Go ahead.
I'm just saying that, just by the way you're basing on who comes in your store and is in his provided service, seems off to me. Because, for example, Elton Simpson is the name of one of the gunmen who opened fire this summer at the Prophet Muhammad cartoon contest in Garland, Texas. I'll just go down some other names for you of people who've been arrested for attempted terrorism. Alexander Chicolo, David Wright, Nicholas Ravinsky, Elton Simpson, as I mentioned, Hassan Edmonds, Terod Pugh, Christopher Cornell.
Islamic extremism comes in all shapes and sizes, and we're not going to be able to, just recognize it right off the bat.
What about mass killers like Dylan Roof? He was a white supremacist. He is
no,
a
absolutely,
white supremacist.
and I won't arm and train anybody from the KKK.
Okay, so you'll ban them too? A guy who wrapped himself in the Confederate flag?
Yeah, if I have reason to believe that that the person is not buying these firearms or getting these trainings to do good in the community or to protect their homes and families from evil people, then I'm not going to sell them firearms, whether that be somebody from the KKK or somebody from, a white supremacy movement or anything like that. But we don't necessarily have to have a sign out that says no KKK. Right? I am not saying in any way, shape, or form that every Muslim is violent at all. Or evil at all. The vast majority of Muslims are peace-loving, normal everyday Americans and people that are not out to seek the jihad. So I'm not denying guns to Muslims who read the Quran. I am denying guns to Muslims who believe the Quran exactly the way it's written and wish to establish a caliphate, a one-world order, and kill unbelievers for not believing.
Now, what really stood out to me was when he said, quote, "I'm not saying every Muslim is violent at all or evil at all. The vast majority of Muslims are peace-loving, everyday Americans." But you are saying that. You are saying that all Muslims are violent because you said that your store is a Muslim-free zone. You didn't specify whether or not it was certain types of Muslims. You just said all Muslims, including the peaceful ones. Now, what is this really about? Is he worried about terrorism or is this about discrimination? Well, he says, quote, "We could save lives by looking at Islam for what it is." Well, then by following that logic, he should have a conversation about Christianity as well. If it was about terrorism, well, he would have to ban Christian right-wingers from his store as well, because they're the ones that have carried out the most terrorist attacks on U.S. soil since 2002. Now, here's the chart. Now, between 2001 and 2015, there's been 460 total terrorist attacks. 26, now 30 people were killed by jihadists, whereas 48 people have been killed by right-wing extremists. Here's the chart of that as well. So now, of course, it's the case that jihadism is a problem too, but I mean, if you really want to tackle the issue of terrorism in the US, well, then you've got to treat right-wing extremist Christians in an even-handed way. So now, what we know is that, come on, man, this is really about discrimination. He hates Muslims and is probably racist, given that most Muslims in the US are not white. Now, he says that he won't harm and train anyone from the KKK, but yet he has a gigantic Confederate flag that he was talking in front of. So you're touting the KKK flag. So you mean to tell me that you're not going to arm and train them? Come on, get your story straight. So now what's the takeaway? He has a responsibility to not sell guns to anyone that could potentially be seen as a threat. But by generalizing and saying that all Muslims are threats is inherently Islamophobic. And this is really harmful to a community in the US that is already marginalized, that is already discriminated against. Look, I'm an atheist, but that doesn't mean that we should treat religious people without respect. I mean, look, if a religious person is going to say something homophobic, or they're going to do something or try to influence policy, then I'm going to have a problem with that. But most Muslims don't do that. Most Muslims are very peaceful. They pay their taxes, and a lot of them are liberal. 43 or 42%, I believe, support marriage equality in the US. So, yeah, I don't think that we should just be rude to people and treat them badly if we disagree with them. I think that's wrong inherently. So at the end of the day, he conceded and said, no, I'm not going to not sell guns to Muslims. I'm just not going to sell guns to Muslim fundamentalists. But that's not what you said. If that's what you said, if you had specified that you're not going to sell guns to Muslim fundamentalists or any fundamentalists, even Christian fundamentalists, then there would be absolutely no controversy. But since now you're in hot water because of your comments, well, you're going to walk them back. I mean, you were on here acting like a big tough guy, saying this is a Muslim-free zone. But when you get a little bit of controversy, what's going to happen? It's going to affect your bottom line, and people aren't going to want to purchase from you. So then you got to backtrack. Well, here's the deal. You shouldn't have said any of these Islamophobic comments to begin with. It's absolutely horrible, and it makes you look like a bigot because you are a bigot. So now, look, is it the case that there are Muslim fundamentalists in the U.S.? Well, of course, that was the case with the Chattanooga shooting. But by and large, most American Muslims, most Muslims in the world are peaceful, and a lot of U.S. Muslims are very, very secular, and they don't even advocate for religion and politics like a lot of Christians do. So here's the deal. If you really wanted to stop terrorism, I mean, if this was about ameliorating violence, then you would be treating Christian right-wing extremists in a perfectly even-handed way to anyone else that you would suspect as a fundamentalist. But you weren't doing that. You decided to throw an entire group of people under the bus and say that they're all violent. Well, guess what? That's not okay. And yeah, we're going to critique you for it because that's bigoted and Islamophobic.